Welcome to our committee meeting today. What we're going to try to do here is that on our agenda, we have House Bill 2203, which we will work today, but we're going to pick up where we left off on House Bill 2244, the hemp bill and the disposal of those products that need to be done and taking care of that. So we had the hearing last Thursday, and so we want to go over, we have an amendment to rectify some of the problems, and we'll go over that, and then we can pass, hopefully, if everybody's comfortable, we can pass it out today and send it on favorably. So right now, we will start with revisers, and we'll pick up 2203 as soon as we complete the hemp bill here. So that's where the schedule is going to go. So we'll start with House Bill 2244, and we'll ask the reviser to give us a rundown of what the product is and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. House Bill 2244 addresses two matters relating to industrial hemp. The first part of the bill would establish requirements for the effective disposal of industrial hemp. And the second part of the bill would transfer the Kansas Department of Agriculture statutory authority to register hemp processors to the state fire marshal. I'm happy to go into more detail, but those are the two main components of the bill.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up is we want to take a look at the amendment. We have an amendment that should solve most of our problems with transportation, those kinds of things. So, and I'll introduce that amendment and have the reviser explain that. Many of you drew it out for us. Go ahead, Tamara. Are you going to do the amendment?
Yep, give me just a second to get that sent to Judy and put up on the screen, and I'll start discussing it.
Committee, everybody should have a copy of the amendment that we passed out.
All right, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
So this balloon amendment would bring in two additional statutes to the bill that are part of the Commercial Industrial Hemp Act. The first statute, you can see these in the attachment at the end of the balloon. The first statute is 23901, which is the definition section of the Commercial Industrial Hemp Act. And this would amend the definition of hemp products. You should be able to see kind of a little bit before the middle of the page in paragraph 4. This would strike some language there and add additional language. So the definition of hemp products would be all products made from industrial hemp, including but not limited to, and it lists several things. And then it would also include any extract from industrial hemp intended for further processing. And then the second part of the balloon, if you go to the next page, brings in KSA 23908, which refers to unlawful hemp products, penalties, and exceptions. And kind of starting at the bottom of that page in B1, it would say that it would be unlawful for the following to be sold: who is not registered as a hemp processor or who does not possess a license. And then it lists all those products. So if you're a hemp processor, you would be able to do this, and it would add to that list any extract from industrial hemp with a delta 9 THC concentration greater than 0.3%. That will be further processed. And then the second part of that, at the very top of the next page, it would add a paragraph that says no license would be required for the transport of hemp products described in paragraph 1, and including that product that's to be further processed, if those products are transported between hemp producers and hemp processors, or between hemp processors. But it does say that that transportation would be subject to rules and regulations promulgated by the state fire marshal. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Anybody have any questions offhand for the reviser? Senator Stroud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I lost my place here. One moment. On item under section 6F, it says any other hemp product intended for human or animal consumption containing any ingredient derived from industrial hemp that is prohibited. So it only would prohibit items, I assume, containing THC. Would it not prohibit THC-free fiber or any other byproduct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Not, I would like to call on some of the stakeholders that were here last meeting, and I particularly call on the Fire Marshal to comment on the process of securing this amendment and what it meant and how it worked for the whole bill that we're looking at today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Committee. Our office is in support of the amendment. We think it clears up one of the major stumbling blocks that we have with the current hemp processors in the state, and the ability for them to, if they don't process the hemp completely through to like a CBD oil, and they only do a partial process, that allows them to sell that intermediate substance or that distillate and transport it to another processor who then will process it into a finished product. We've been working with the industry and other representatives, and we're comfortable with this amendment, and it will help, I think, the industrial hemp program in the state move forward. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the Fire Marshal? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When they say process, take that to another processor, is that inside the state or outside the state?
Right now, it could be.
Okay, any other questions? Senator Ware.
Just a comment. I want to thank you so much, Fire Marshal, for being so willing to look at this brand new industry that we're building here, and with an eye to doing it right and it being successful all at the same time. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. And also for the committee's information, there was a lot of testimony last week about the rules and regs, and there were a couple main points that the processors had concerns with. And our office really doesn't have any issue with adjusting those, so we'll be working with the processors going forward to adjust those final rules and regulations too. The two main ones were on the seed devitalization, the time limit that was there, then also on the daily record keeping. They thought the daily record keeping was a little overbearing, but we'll be working with them on both of those issues going forward too.
Senator, let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the assumption that we would be still asking for seed devitalization?
The seed devitalization can still take place. It's just in the rules and regs. We had set a 10-day limit for that to happen, and the processors are brought to our attention that's not really realistic, and so we're going to lengthen that time frame on when the seeds can be devitalized.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a concern about that because we're learning that hemp seeds are a valuable animal food. And so I'm trying to figure out if they don't have a traceable amount of THC in them, why would we be asking them to be devitalized? Yes, if your job is to produce the oil, and that's what you're interested in, the seed may not be of value to you. But I don't want every hemp processor, if they are processing animal food, to have to devitalize seed. So I still have a concern.
And again, we're in the process of visiting with the processors on that. And if we can identify that those seeds actually do not contain any THC, they will be outside of our rules and regulations, because our rules and regulations basically are only addressing things that contain THC under the current drug law. So if they don't contain THC, those items will be outside of our rules and regulations, but they might fall under ag and different food product regulations, depending on how those seeds are used.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm pleased that this amendment is identifying industrial hemp buds, the hemp floral material, the hemp leaf material, the extract. But, and I understand those are the things that we are most concerned about transporting. Why would we require a $1,000 license fee from someone who's growing hemp for the seeds to feed animals?
That will be something else that we'll have to work on, because we've identified right now 4 different types of processors. So as we work with the industry on the current rules and regs, we're going to separate those different types of processors, and there will probably be different types of fees charged depending on the level of processor that they are. And again, if there's a processor that is dealing in just seeds and they don't contain any THC, we won't be regulating that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering then if we need to change the wording. This is in 2244, page 3 on lines 18, where it says registration shall expire annually on June 30th, to say registration fees not to include $1,000. So it's very clear that there could be more than one fee. I think otherwise, I mean, I agree with what you're proposing, makes sense, but our bill, the underlying bill that we're addressing just calls for a single registration fee.
Any other comments on that?
We'll leave that up to the committee.
Committee, you're in favor of adding that language, not to exceed $1,000? Is that what it was? What was your?
Mr. Chair, the language is already that a registration fee not to exceed $1,000, but I'm saying registration fees. So that would allow in rules and regs to establish more than one category, which is, I believe, is what
Okay.
the fire marshal was referring to.
So you just want fees?
I want, yeah, to strike A and say registration fees not to exceed $1,000, or none of which to exceed $1,000. The reviser could help with that. But if the idea is really, I had, talked a bit about wanting to say that we would, clarify. And if we find out that it's only the buds, the floral material, the leaf material, those may be things that we could redefine, come back and redefine processors. But at this time, if the idea is to, we haven't acted on this amendment yet. So mine would be a follow-up concern, but a question now in trying to understand what all this change would make.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Jorgensen? Thank you very much. Appreciate your help. I'd like to ask Councilor Mr. Titus to come and have a few remarks. I want to especially thank him for he took the lead over the last weekend to get this amendment moved forward so that everybody could agree on it and make sure that would work. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kenny Titus, Chief Counsel, Kansas Department of Agriculture. I would just add we worked very closely with the State Fire Marshal, the KBI. You heard Mr. Ripple speak on behalf of a number of processors and growers. We consulted with him yesterday as well. So we touched all of our important stakeholders that are involved in the regulation and production and growing of hemp. And we believe that this amendment targets that specific transportation issue we had. It doesn't mess with anything other than the industrial hemp law. It's a targeted way to make sure we can move these products between processors And like I said, we helped put this together, and we're supportive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the counselor? Senator Ware.
Again, not really a question, but just a compliment. Thank you so much, Kenny, for being so helpful. And this is such, new industry has such potential for the state. And I thank you so much.
All right then. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since you're here, do you think it might be appropriate to have different registration fees depending on the processing of the hemp that's being handled?
The original amendment to A 2244 explicitly allows rules and regulations to create different classes of registrant. So that was what the state fire marshal was discussing. We explicitly put that in the original bill. So I think it's covered. If we need to add an S to fees, that would be fine. But we assumed that we had it covered if it was a dropping of a letter. That would be fine to make sure the fees can be different, but I think it's okay.
All right then. Any other questions for Mr. Titus? Senator Francisco.
We heard some about maintenance of records. That's another thing that, so, you know, one of my concerns is just, you know, that you're allowing rules and regs and they're not at all limited. So this is really very broad in terms of transferring those rules and regs provisions to the state fire marshal. So would there be any interest? I mean, I think one thing we heard in the discussion was talking about maintenance of records based on batch control or based on batch. And that would not limit you, but it would indicate that that would be an appropriate way. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Our experience with this has been, it's been every year we've come before you here for the last 3 years, tweaking it. It's a very fluid process. We're getting ready for, we just adopted new rules and regulations for the growers, and we're just getting ready for another round here in a couple of weeks that we're gonna run through again with the pace at which hemp production and hemp growth is changing. The flexibility with the rules and regs seems to be the best option in our experience now, but we'd leave that to the will of the committee.
All right, thank you very much. We'll appreciate your remarks. Committee, at this time, I think if there's any more discussion, I'd entertain a motion to pass. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in reading over this, and I haven't had a lot of time, I was looking to see if there was, I think I just saw something about any rules and regs by the fire marshal, that they would need to follow any rules and regs by the fire marshal. Mr. Chair, it may be in the base bill.
I think I'm going to go ahead and ask for a
Which page? Section 4C was where I was talking about the registration. But I think that would be a second amendment. So I will make them, if I have any changes, I think it's fine to go ahead and adopt and I don't have any concerns about the language that's been presented.
Okay, committee, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment as we viewed it. Senator Dahl made the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Ware. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to propose or make a motion that we change on page 3, line 18, to say registration fees shall be established to pursuant. I think it's very appropriate to have a level of fees, and I'm glad that the State Fire Marshal is considering that. So I would make that as a motion.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator Ware. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carried. I got a note here. Kelly Ripple, is she here? Oh,
Yes, I am here.
yeah. Did you have something you want to add to that? We just passed the amendment on the bill. Did you have something?
Well, yes, Chairman Kirshen and committee members, thank you. I do have some things to share, I guess, from our meeting with the State Advisory Board that happened Friday. And I was hoping to have spoken by now, but I do need to leave here shortly. But I think one of the things, I guess, that Kenneth had alluded to earlier, he did suggest that, you know, we hold a meeting where we can get everyone involved and really do a thorough, comprehensive outlook on what the hemp program does need moving forward, what changes need to happen on a larger scale. But overall, I did just kind of wanted to share that while I do agree with the amendments and the language that has been put forward, I think we can go a step further. And I shared some language with Senator Francisco and Senator Ware. And what these changes do ultimately is match the USDA final hemp rule and the USDA legal opinion about that, and in that removing hemp from the Schedule I controlled substance. So I would like to propose that perhaps this be discussed, and again, I can also here just very briefly provide some updates about the advisory hemp board. But ultimately, we are moving forward, and I was hoping that Kenneth would have been on that meeting. I know he's very, very busy. But on Friday, the State Advisory Hemp Board did agree with the 3 rules and regs that were addressed from the USDA final rule, and we're moving forward with that. And like Kenneth said, that the KDA is now in the process of matching at the federal level. So I do feel like we need to now open up and make sure that all of these provisions are allowed, particularly within that 2-3908, we're talking about unlawful hemp products. Let's say we were to just cross out on section F, that is, and put in language saying, except those. So it actually reads, we're talking about hemp products derived from industrial hemp, except those that are prohibited pursuant to the Food and Drug. And that makes all of these products legal. We've heard from industry folks throughout the years, and especially through the program, that this needs to happen. And so I would hope that the committee would address these and consider these changes that have been put forth. Because like I said, I do agree with the amendments that the Fire Marshal and the Department of Ag has put forward. I don't have any problem with them. The industry doesn't as well, but I think we can go a step further just to make sure that we are in alignment with federal law. Thank you.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do have a question, which is, when you say you shared this with me, is this the email that I'm just seeing that was sent at 8:09 this morning?
That is correct. That is correct.
So I apologize for looking at the paper in front of me and not all my email. Thank you.
All right, committee. Well, we've approved the amendment, and now we was on adjustments to that. Does anybody else have any adjustments, amendment, additions? Senator Ware.
Yeah, and I apologize. My computer, it doesn't stay hooked up to the internet here, and I have not seen that email yet either. And it may well be that this is the perfect time to add just a few more things to really get this, so we don't have to wait yet another year, to get this industry going.
Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think now is the time to pass this. We can get things put on the floor. We need to get this out of committee. We can't be muddy. This thing's been muddied up all this time. We need to get something out. And so I strongly urge the committee to pass this thing out as amended at the amendment we just put on.
Okay, does someone want to make that motion? Pass it out favorably? Senator Dahl.
I move that we move out House Bill 2244 as amended favorably.
Second?
I'll second.
Second by Senator Fagg. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Bill is adopted and carried forward. Thank you very much, committee and participants. We appreciate all your help, and hopefully in the future can still take your guidance and make this even a better product. So thank you very much. At this time, committee, we want to move to our next item on the agenda is House Bill 2203, and I'll open the hearing on House Bill 2203, and we'll start with the reviser. Tamara, why don't you explain about asbestos?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2203 is actually similar to Senate Bill 261, which this committee heard and passed earlier this year. 261 was amended on the Senate floor, and I will talk about that amendment in a moment. But first, I'll go through House Bill 2203. So prior to last year, money from the asbestos program was deposited in the state general fund. In last year's budget bill, Senate Bill 66, a proviso was included that established the asbestos remediation fund and directed money collected related to asbestos remediation to that fund. House Bill 2203 would establish that asbestos remediation fund in statute. The Secretary of Health and Environment would administer the fund. The Secretary would be required to remit to the state treasury all monies collected or received from permit and approval fees collected under the asbestos control program. Any monies recovered by the state under the program, including administrative expenses, civil penalties, and monies paid under any agreement, stipulation, or settlement, and interest attributable to investment of monies in the fund. All such monies would be deposited in the state treasury to the credit of the asbestos remediation fund. Monies deposited in that fund would be expended only for the purpose of administering the Kansas Asbestos Control Act. The bill would also amend 2 additional statutes in sections 2 and 3 on page 2 to direct the state treasurer to credit all fees and civil penalties received under the asbestos control program to the asbestos remediation fund instead of the state general fund. The bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tamara. Good job as usual. Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will go to our proponents. And committee, by the way, we've already passed this bill out as a Senate Bill 160 or 161, whatever it was. And the House had it bogged down in a budget committee and then appropriations, and asked if we would go ahead and do it again. That's why we're doing it again now. So we'll make sure it gets done. Okay, we'll move to proponents. We'll start with first proponent, Leo Henning from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Leo, you there? I saw you earlier.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Kirshen and committee members for allowing me to provide some testimony today in support of House Bill 2203. I am Leo Henning and the Deputy Secretary and Director of Environment at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. I do want to thank Chairman Kirshen and the committee members for hearing this bill again. House Bill 2203 is very much like Senate Bill 261 that this committee worked, and it passed in the Senate 38-1. The bill House Bill 2203 passed on the House side, 122 to 2. So there is general support for this bill. Just as a reminder, House Bill 2203 pertains to the Asbestos Control Act. The purpose of the act is to license companies that perform asbestos abatement and to ensure proper handling and disposal of asbestos material. As was mentioned, there was a proviso last year in the budget that asked the agency to come forward with this bill. And this bill does exactly what the proviso asked, which was to create an asbestos remediation fund in statute and direct fees collected by the program to that asbestos remediation fund. The asbestos remediation industry supports this bill because they want the fees that they pay into the program to stay with the program that supports their efforts. With that, I thank you again, and I ask you to pass the bill out favorably, and I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Leo. We appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Henning? Seeing none, thank you very much. Good job, Leo. And
Thank you.
committee, I draw your attention to other proponents as written on your agenda. We have Randy Stuckey from Kansas Grain and Feed, Paul Ryan from ACM Removal, Greg Leader, Paul B. Van B. and B. Asbestos, Alan Sill, Ray Furman, Leslie Kaufman, Kansas Electric Co-ops, and there were no neutrals, no opponents. Is there anybody else that want to testify in support of as a proponent of this bill, House Bill 2203? Is there anybody who wants to testify neutral? Is there anyone that would be as opponent? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Bill 2203 committee, and we'll move to final action on this particular bill. And I don't think we have to have the revisor go over it again. And we just heard it, so if someone would entertain a motion to pass, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the bill that I offered an amendment on the Senate floor that was adopted, and that was the amendment that took away the monies credited to the asbestos remediation funds if they were penalties. So it left the fees but not the penalties. My understanding is that the best way to accomplish that would be, and I'm not sure if the reviser put together an amendment to do this, but to just remove Section 3 from the bill and then remove the reference to 65-5314 in the name of the act or definition of the act. So the Senate did agree that it did not make sense to put the penalties into this fund, but rather just the fees themselves.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we pass this bill and we go to conference on this bill, is that correct? Could you add that in conference?
Sure could.
Make the motion we pass this out favorably as amended.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman?
By Senator Tamara, that's you?
If this bill is not amended by the Senate, it is the same version that passed the House. And so there would be nothing for them to non-concur on to get the bill into conference.
Okay, thank you for that information there, Tamara. So I guess we'd have a motion to do your amendment, to add that amendment to the final bill, and we'll be conferenceable.
It would be. So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we strike Section 3 from the bill and the reference to KSA 65-5314 in the title.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second by Senator McGinn? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The amendment is adopted. Any other discussion, committee? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without the amendment, I'm trying to determine the differences between 2203 and 261. Looks like the only difference I can find is in the title. The words specifying the expenditure of monies therefrom are not in 2203. I just wonder, are there really differences, or is that really no differences between the two bills as they were presented before the amendment? And I don't know if that's a reviser's question or...
That's a reviser's question. Tamara, you want to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2203, before the amendment that was just adopted, is the same as 261 when it was in this committee. But on the Senate floor, an amendment was adopted to 261. And that would basically do the same thing that Senator Francisco's amendment just did. It would strike the reference on page 1 to civil penalties, and any money that's collected due to those civil penalties would go to the state general fund. That's how Senate Bill 261, as it was amended by the Senate Committee as a whole, is currently drafted.
Thank you. I understand that, Mr. Chairman. My question was, as they were presented in committee, 261 as presented in committee, 2203 as presented in committee. Again, the only difference I saw was in the title, that there are some words that are in 261 title that are not in 2203 title. And is that the only difference, and does that even matter, was my question, because as I see it, the title part on 261 says specifying the expenditure of monies therefrom. So the title is 4 sentences versus 3. So that would be my question. With all due respect, Tamara, I understood that other part.
My apologies for misunderstanding your question. Yes, other than the title, everything else in the bills as they were introduced and originally seen by this committee were the same.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, then why were the words specifying the expenditure of monies therefrom put in the title in 261, but not in 2203? Different revisers or?
Yeah, I don't know this for sure, but my guess is our editing department, the second time through, saw fit to make a clarification there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought I would try to figure out what the differences may or may not be. But
Thank you very much. Appreciate your diligence on that. So, committee, next we made the amendment. Need a motion to pass out favorably this bill. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we pass out
House Bill 2203. Is there a second? Senator Dahl, talking about Senator Dahl. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. The bill is adopted, passed favorably. Committee, that's all the work I have today, and so I appreciate all your work and your attention to the process, and I'm very appreciate that we got the hemp bill moving, and so we can get to make it even better. So thank you again. We will be meeting tomorrow. We're having an informational hearing on exotic animals, so informational hearing only, and we'll see what they're about, and we'll hear their testimony. So after that, there is nothing scheduled for Thursday or Friday, so you're on your own. Thank you very much, and we're adjourned.